on wheels. She-Devils on wheels. She-Devils on wheels.
Hello and welcome to These Days Are Ours, a Happy Days podcast. I'm Peter.
And I'm Joe.
And today, you're discussing Season 7, Episode 11, Fonzie versus the She-Devils.
Okay, Peter, tell us what happens in Fonzie versus the She-Devils.
We open at Arnold's, where Al is showing Richie the new jackets for the band, plaid blazers.
You want to be a hip musician too, don't you?
Potsy and Ralph, who have been forced into them by Al, bully Richie into putting one on as well. Al leaves, right as a trio of girls in blue turtlenecks and leather jackets, the She-Devils, enter.
She-Devils? They must be a motorcycle gang.
Ralph suggests he, Richie, and Potsy go sweep them off their feet, but Richie says he won't. Lori Beth may be gone for the weekend, but Richie's not going to tomcat around on her. Meanwhile, the She-Devils are checking them out too, and they think the guys are just the type that Bertha told them to bring to the nerd party.
Get a load of those jackets. They look like a test pattern.
Richie is talked into joining Potsy and Ralph right as the She-Devils approach them and invite them to a party tonight. One of them goes so far as to kiss Richie, which pretty much makes him forget all about Lori Beth.
I need for you to be at that party with me.
And I need to be there.
The trio arrive at the party that night, still wearing the plaid jackets. Richie notices that there's something off about the other guys. The She-Devil leader, Big Bertha, comes to inspect them.
This is what you brought me, huh? Nice jackets.
She explains the She-Devil with the most interesting date wins $100. She decides to start with Ralph, who tells a lame joke.
You want to hear about my new watchdog? He's a scream. Every time I yell attack, he has one.
Potsy is also immediately dismissed.
My name is Potsy Weber.
Next.
Then Richie gives a brief autobiography. He's a journalism major, he regularly eats dinner with his parents, and in fact, he lives with his parents. Richie and the She-Devil who brought him win the contest.
We got a winner here.
Another She-Devil, annoyed, says she could find someone better and goes to do so. Richie, meanwhile, has figured out what's going on. He gathers all the male partygoers and explains. You know those parties where guys bring a homely girl, and the guy who brought the homeliest wins a prize? This is that, but for nerdy guys instead.
The only reason any of us are at this party is because the She-Devils think we're square.
He tries to lead all the guys out, but then several She-Devils bring in a sack carrying a guy who crossed them by breaking the heart of Rhonda, Bertha's kid sister. Then Chachi sticks his head out of the sack.
I was on my way home from basketball practice, right? When these 10 girls jumped on me. I thought it was my lucky day.
Chachi is subsequently chained to the sink. They plan to keep Chachi there until 9 o'clock, after which they will shave Chachi's head. They won't be kicking out Richie and his friends either, since then they'll get Chachi's cousin Fonzarelli.
Heard he's bad news. His name's Fonzarelli.
Richie nevertheless concocts a plan where he'll escape through the bathroom window and go get Fonzie, while Ralph and Potsy stay behind to keep Chachi safe. When the She-Devils consider shaving Chachi's head now, Potsy and Ralph try to distract them by asking them to dance.
We haven't even been dancing. Hey, put on the radio, huh? Let's do some dancing.
They instead insist Potsy and Ralph dance with each other, which they find unnatural, but do anyway for Chachi's sake. At the Cunningham house, Fonzie and the Cunninghams are having a sing-along at the piano, which Fonzie is starting to find tedious.
Are you having a good time out there?
Am I having a good time? I didn't know what a good time was till I got here.
Richie runs in, much to Fonzie's relief. They go into the kitchen, and Richie explains that Chachi has been kidnapped and is about to be shaved.
They never think of anything new.
Fonzie tells Richie to go stall, as Fonzie thinks of something that will save Chachi, but not involve hitting girls. Back at the She-Devil headquarters, Ralph and Potsy are still dancing together and having a good time of it. Richie returns, and he and his friends try to think of something to do. Richie ultimately unplugs the razor and sticks the plug into his shirt.
You come and get it, if you've got the guts.
So Bertha just rips his shirt all the way off. They're all about to fight, when the She-Devil who left earlier returns with a twerp who could easily beat Richie in the nerd contest. She calls in Artie, and it's none other than Fonzie in nerd clothes, acting incredibly shy and speaking in a deeply weird voice about collecting snails.
I was collecting snails with my snail mittens. You know, I have a snail circus and I needed 2 more performers.
He accidentally rips off the sink that Chachi is chained to, allowing him and the other guys to go into the bathroom. With the door locked, Bertha decides to kick it down, and out comes Fonzie, no longer in his nerd persona.
Fonzarelli.
Yeah, that's what it says on my library card. You been in my back pocket?
He tells them to live and let live, then puts his hat and glasses onto Bertha.
A two-headed nerd contest, and you'll never guess who won.
Back at Arnold's, as Richie is sawing off the chain from Chachi's leg, Fonzie scolds him for dumping Rhonda.
So I dumped a girl. Big deal. You do it all the time.
Fonzie has never dumped a girl. You have to level with a girl and treat them with tenderness, kindness, and respect.
Try a little tenderness.
Back at the Cunningham house, the The Cunninghams have another sing-along, as Fonzie arrives, then immediately leaves.
Goodbye forever, all sweethearts and pals.
Thank you, Peter. That was Fonzie versus the She-Devils. It first aired back on November 27th, 1979. Happy Days was followed that night by a new Angie, in which Angie becomes jealous of a sexy divorcee named Karen, who is the mother of one of Brad's patients.
Hey, that's Karen!
NBC had a new episode of The Misadventures of Sheriff Lobo, featuring guest star Larry Storch as a wacky hillbilly named Pappy Beauregard. Pappy's son Junior has found some stolen money and won't tell anyone where he's hidden it, leading Lobo and his deputy on a wild goose chase.
You ask me, where's the money? Where's the money? I don't know where the money is. I don't know anything about math. It was never my good subject.
And CBS gave California Fever the night off and instead aired Bugs Bunny's Looney Christmas Tales, an animated holiday special including a parody of A Christmas Carol with Yosemite Sam as Scrooge, Porky as Bob Cratchit, and Tweety as Tiny Tim.
Please, can I have a piece of coal? Just a small one. I'm freezing.
No, you can't. I give you a piece of coal last Tuesday. You should have made it last.
So, Peter, of those three choices, what are you watching?
The Looney Tunes Christmas Carol. It's like you don't even know me, Joe.
I'm absolutely watching Bugs Bunny's Looney Christmas Tales, but I had to ask, maybe you would be swayed by the prospect of Larry Storch on Misadventures of Sheriff Lobo.
I like Larry Storch, but he's no Porky Pig.
Fonzie versus the She-Devils was directed by Jerry Paris, and it was written by Sam Greenbaum. Sam worked as a TV comedy writer from the late 70s to the early 90s. This is his only script credit on Happy Days, though he had been listed as a story editor on Fonzie's a Thespian. Before Happy Days, Sam wrote for All in the Family, Maude, Three's Company, and the Bad News Bears TV show. After this, he wrote for Amanda's, Too Close for Comfort, What's Happening Now, and Saved by the Bell. His last known credit is an animated special starring Roseanne Barr and Tom Arnold called The Rosie and Buddy Show.
Wow, so this is Cartoon Land. It's so bright and cheery.
Yeah, it makes me want to puke.
As for guest stars this week, let's start with Judy Pioli as Bertha, the leader of the She-Devils. Judy is a writer, producer, director, and occasional actress from Brooklyn. She wrote for Blansky's Beauties, Laverne and Shirley, and Charles in Charge. Plus, she was a writer-producer on Valerie and Webster. She was also one of the producers on Good Time Girls and directed episodes of Step by Step, The Golden Girls, Wings, and Perfect Strangers. As an actress, Judy appeared on Laverne and Shirley multiple times.
Her hair is just squeaky clean. What do you use? Ajax.
Mork and Mindy, Simon and Simon, and Step by Step. She'll be back on Happy Days in season 10. So, Peter, what did you think of Judy Pioli as Bertha?
She was great. She had a lot of presence, and I felt like she was very believable as the leader of a girl gang. She wasn't really going to do anything that bad. I mean, she just wanted to shave Chachi's head, and she had a good reason for it.
And I was only a little bit disappointed that we didn't get to see Chachi get his head shaved.
You know, Scott Baio is a teen idol now, and they don't want to get rid of those luscious locks or the fangirls will be upset.
But Judy is great. She's very, very tall. She has very poofy hair, and she just has a great personality, and I loved seeing her in this. So Judy Pioli was probably my favorite part of this entire episode. Then we have Sarah Rush as Fern, the brunette she-devil who kisses Richie. Sarah is an actress from Waynesburg, Pennsylvania, who has worked mainly in TV since the late 70s. Before this, Sarah was best known as Flight Corporal Rigel on Battlestar Galactica.
Oh, wow.
Enemy closing in. 10 microns.
She'd also appeared on The Incredible Hulk and in the TV movie Doctor Strange. After Happy Days, she guested on such TV shows as Quincy, Everybody Loves Raymond, Monk, Friends, and The Middle. Sarah's movies include Catch Me If You Can and The Nude Bomb, starring her mentor, Don Adams. So what did you think of Sarah Rush as Fern?
She didn't do a ton, but I did find her delivery of, I need you to come to this party, to be very amusing. She was laying it on very thick, but hey, it worked on Richie, who has the willpower of something that doesn't have a lot of willpower.
Yeah, I think Sarah Rush plays this seductress, this siren, very well. We also have Georgianne LaPierre as Joy. We've seen Georgianne before, back in season 2 in Fish and the Fins. To refresh your memory, she's the half-sister of Cher. Her other acting credits include General Hospital, The Love Boat, Welcome Back, Kotter, Fantasy Island, The Streets of San Francisco, T.J. Hooker, and Ozzy's Girls. She is retired from acting now, but says that she would like to get back into it. Did Georgianne LaPierre make any impression on you?
I did like that her response to Richie winning the contest was like, I can do better than that.
I could find somebody better than him.
Richie is pretty impressively dweeby. One of the things he mentions when he gives his speech is that he's responsible for diagonal parking at college. Yeah, that is impressively dweeby.
Georgianne plays this tough biker chick who would mock somebody like Richie. Yeah, I think she plays this part pretty well. And last but not least, we have Karen Jensen as Ethel.
And I hollered over to Ethel. I said, "Don't look, Ethel!"
The she-devil who finds Artie in the parking lot. Born in San Francisco, Karen is a model, actress, and beauty queen who worked in TV from the mid-'60s to the late 1970s. She was a regular on the drama Bracken's World.
Margot says you were doing fine yesterday.
Don't worry, when the cameras roll, I'll be Gwen Verdon.
And guest starred on Dragnet, The Virginian, Love American Style, Emergency, The Wild West, Moving On, Hollywood Squares, and more. This appearance on Happy Days marked the end of her acting career. Peter, what did you think of Karen Jensen as Ethel?
I found her condescending treatment of Fonzie in his nerd persona to be very funny. It's mean, but he's also tricking her, so it's just funny. She just finds this random guy, and he's just perfect for what she's got planned. Can you imagine her scouring Milwaukee as the events of this episode are happening? And just happening to find a perfect nerd to win the contest and thinking, yes, this is what I need. What a wonderful coincidence.
You know, you bring up something. Ethel probably should have realized that this was a trap.
It's a trap!
That it was a little too convenient that the most nerdy nerd just happens to be in their parking lot.
Well, she left before Chachi was brought in. She probably just wasn't thinking about the fact that the She-Devils have kidnapped someone, and there's a possibility that his cousin might come rescue him.
As for songs, we hear Poison Ivy by the Coasters, Blueberry Hill by Fats Domino, and Blue Moon by the Marcells. And good Lord, are there a lot of sing-alongs in this episode. The Beer Barrel Polka is performed by Aaron Moran, Tom Bosley, Marion Ross, and Henry Winkler.
Roll out the barrel, we'll have a barrel.
The melody was written in 1927, but it didn't become known as the Beer Barrel Polka until new lyrics were added in 1939. By the Light of the Silvery Moon is also performed by Aaron, Tom, Marion, and Henry, with Ron Howard joining in.
By the light of the silvery moon.
This is at least the third time the 1909 song has been performed on Happy Days. Potsy sang it in Fonzie for the Defense, and Arnold sang it with Laverne and Shirley in Fonzie the Superstar. I'll have to revisit that episode. That sounds amazing.
Oh, yeah.
And then at the end, That Old Gang of Mine is performed by Ron, Aaron, Marion, and Tom.
It's fitting because this episode is about a lady biker gang.
Gee, but I'd give the world to see that old gang.
This song was written in 1923 by Ray Henderson, Billy Rose, and Mort Dixon for the Ziegfeld Follies.
Gee, but I give the world to see that old gang of mine.
As for cultural and historical references, this entire episode is built around the idea of a quote-unquote nerd party in which the girls compete to bring in the nerdiest dates. Richie compares this to those parties where everybody brings a homely girl. It's difficult to verify the existence of such parties, but urban legend has it that Marines hold so-called dogfight parties. The 1991 film Dogfight, which is set in the 1960s, depicts this kind of party with River Phoenix as a Marine and Lily Taylor as his date.
We have a tradition in the Marines. The rules are simple. Each of the guys puts in $75. You set up a meeting place and time, and then you go out and see what you can bring back.
There was a stage adaptation of Dogfight in 2013. Had you heard of Dogfight in any form?
Yes, I had. I've heard some songs from the musical.
Are they good?
I like the titular song.
We should also mention the 1998 French film The Dinner Game, where the object is to bring the stupidest guest to a dinner party. It was remade in 2010 as Dinner for Schmucks. And as for real-life versions of parties like this, a fraternity at Cornell was accused of throwing a quote-unquote pig roast contest in 2018.
A sex contest called the Pig Roast has landed the Zeta Beta Tau fraternity's Cornell University chapter on probation.
An investigation eventually revealed that while the contest was discussed by fraternity members, it was never actually held. I cannot find any evidence that parties of this sort ever actually happened anywhere. Had you heard of parties like this?
I had because of Dogfight, but yeah, it's possible this is like rainbow parties that parents got worried about in the 2000s. I had heard of them because of Dogfight, but I figured that they were something that just happened in the past and died out. Them being an urban legend also makes sense. Like the kind of thing that guys joke about but don't actually do. Because if they did do them, that would be a really shitty thing to do.
I don't think many of these parties have actually ever happened. However, the world is a big place, and it has a lot of people in it who will do horrible things to other people. So
that is very true.
So somewhere in history, maybe a party like this actually happened. But Richie brings it up, those parties where everybody brings a homely girl.
Like it's a thing that they themselves have done. In which case, you all kind of deserve this. They're not even calling you ugly. They're just calling you nerdy, which, based on our limited sample size of Richie, Potsy, and Ralph, they kind of are. I'm kind of impressed that Ralph wasn't more of a contender, considering he opened with an extremely lame joke, and that's like his thing.
I watched this episode twice, and I honestly did not get his joke the first time.
Did it come with a booklet that you follow along? Because what's here is not funny.
You're wrong. It is funny, and let me tell you why. Well, you can't explain comedy.
Richie gives the address of the She-Devils party as 224 Hoover Street. There is no Hoover Street in Milwaukee, but there is one in Los Angeles, which may be where the name comes from. I think on Happy Days, they have to be very careful about giving fake addresses.
Lest places don't get swarmed by rabid Happy Days fans, the way that Forks, Washington got swarmed by rabid Twilight fans.
Fonzie's Artie character seems to be based on Jerry Lewis's performance as Professor Julius Kelp in The Nutty Professor.
Yeah, it's aggressively Jerry Lewis.
Yes, as a matter of fact, now that you bring it up, the additive was specifically 3 parts carbon, 5 parts hydrogen, 1 part nitrogen, and 3 parts oxygen.
Which, of course, is?
And nitroglycerin.
Artie advises the She-Devils to buy bonds. During World War II, the U.S. government sold Series E war bonds to help raise money for the military. Backed by a massive multimedia publicity campaign, war bonds were a huge success. 85 million Americans bought $185 billion worth of war bonds.
Your money's got work to do over there. So don't waste time. Visit your nearest bank or post office and start saving the Series E war bonds way today.
And Fonzie mistakenly refers to the Scarlet Letter as the Purple Letter. Believe it or not, this is the first time in 7 seasons that Happy Days has referenced Nathaniel Hawthorne's 1850 novel about Puritans in the 1640s.
Nathaniel, what are you doing?
Just ruining 9th grade for everyone.
It took him 7 seasons to get around to the Scarlet Letter.
A little bit surprising.
Okay, this is Ralph's 3rd wiki wacky woo. It's obviously a new attempt at a catchphrase. I am glad this one didn't take. I can't imagine the kids on the playgrounds across America actually saying wiki wacky woo. That was never going to happen, Peter.
It was not. I don't think that the kids were rapidly imitating Ralph Mouth. Fonzie is the one that the kids really love. I appreciate Ralph Mouth. I think that he's surprisingly fun at times, and I like Don Mouth's performance, but he's no Fonzie.
I think it's fair to call Richie a serial cheater at this point. Remember that he goes to the She-Devils party of his own free will, specifically to see Fern again.
And he even mentions Lori Beth in this episode. So it's not like Lori Beth has temporarily blinked out of existence. She's just out of town for the weekend.
Yeah, he cannot resist that She-Devil.
I'm glad you won the nerd party, Richie, because not only are you a nerd, but you are a bad boyfriend.
I was very, very disappointed in Richie this week. I'm impressed that the She-Devils found a human-sized burlap sack. Where do you get those?
At a sack store? In case you need to carry lots of potatoes? You probably put stuff besides potatoes in burlap sacks. I mean, they're in Wisconsin, so cheese?
On the other hand, I would imagine that Richie was gone for at least half an hour, probably more, so the She-Devils couldn't be all that observant.
I mean, they were distracted by Ralph and Potsy's sweet dance moves.
There should be like an Andy Warhol version of this episode where it just stretches on for hours. And we see the whole party play out. Peter, were there any outstanding Happy Days fashions this week?
The She-Devils, very stylish. They've got blue turtlenecks, they've got the leather jackets, they've even got little scarves. Very kicky.
I very much like the blue turtlenecks. They reminded me of what The Lonely Island wore on one of their album covers. So,
yes.
Turtleneck and chain, turtleneck and chain, turtleneck and chain.
Sipping on a light beer.
That looked very cool. What did you think of Fonzie's nerd outfit?
His plan seemed to mostly just be dress in layers and wear a hat to hide his distinctive hair. And hey, it worked. Probably the stereotypical nerd wears lots of layers, especially in the Midwest. if you are a stereotypical nerd, you have a lot of health issues. And so you need to protect yourself in whatever way you can. Also, it's kind of weird how stuff like asthma got stereotyped as nerd stuff, considering it's just a health issue that can affect anyone and doesn't really have to do with one's nerdiness.
Yes, and glasses. I suppose anybody could be myopic.
I guess the idea is that if you have these health issues, then you're more predisposed to nerdiness because they limit your chances for physical activity, but still.
Yeah, you can be cool and still be asthmatic. So, Peter, I will ask that age-old timeless question. Was this episode any good?
Yeah, it was pretty delightful. It's a pretty absurd episode, but I think that's what makes it fun. It's an episode about Chachi getting kidnapped by a girl gang who want to shave him as revenge for breaking their leader's kid sister's heart. I was not really rooting for Chachi to get rescued, but I was kind of intrigued by how he might get rescued. Plus, like we said, it's got Henry Winkler doing a Jerry Lewis impression, so that was actually pretty fun.
This episode made a huge impression on me when I was a kid, and it stuck with me for years. And in rewatching it, I see why. It's actually pretty awesome having this all-female gang come into Milwaukee and push the guys around. Two of the episodes from this season that I really remembered were Fonzie Meets Cat and Fonzie versus the She-Devils. Apparently, when I was a kid, I really responded to these tough female characters. Violent female characters must have really interested me when I was a kid. My first pop culture memory is a Popeye cartoon called Never Kick a Woman, in which Olive Oyl competes with a female bodybuilder for Popeye's affections.
That is so cool.
And then they end up getting into a physical altercation.
Oh boy, what a fight. Come on, Doyle's mix it up. Get in there, fight it.
That's the first pop culture memory I have, is that cartoon. And so that combined with these two episodes of Happy Days, and you see what my pop culture tastes were when I was like 4 or 5 years old.
Yeah.
And so Fonzie versus the She-Devils was thrilling to me then, and it was still fun for me now. And as you say, this is a ridiculous episode. It's very cartoonish. It's very silly. It's very unrealistic, but it was very enjoyable. So I would say definitely watch this one. If Fonzie versus the She-Devils is coming up on MeTV someday, definitely make time to watch it. This is not a serious episode. This is not a heavy episode that covers a lot of serious issues, but it's a ton of fun. I definitely recommend it. So I was very, very excited about Fonzie versus the She-Devils. So, Peter, how can people keep up with us and find out about all the wonderful things that we are doing?
Listeners can follow us on Twitter at Fonzie Podcast. They can follow me on Twitter at Peter Volfranc. That's PeterVulfranc.
And they can follow me on Twitter at Joe_A_Blevins. They can find this podcast online at thesedaysaroours.libsyn.com. And they can email us with questions, comments, and concerns at thesedaysaroourspodcast@gmail.com. So, Peter, what do we have on the docket for next week?
Well, this episode didn't cover a lot of serious ground, but next episode, it's all about ableism, when Fonzie gets a new mechanic who uses a wheelchair in The Mechanic.
Sounds intriguing. So, see you later, alligator.
In a while, crocodile.